Dane, I want to connect with you for a second. Do you ever like, I know when you were a kid and you probably had a crush on somebody, like you'd be like, I wonder what they're doing right now. Are they thinking of me? Like, I bet they're not. I bet I'm not even. This is the talk that goes on in my head a lot. It's like that they don't even know I exist. It's fucking garbage. But I'm thinking of them, so maybe they're thinking of me. You know who I've been doing that a lot with lately?
Who's that?
Kanye West.
Why would Kanye be thinking about
Because
you?
I haven't. No, not thinking about me. I'm just wondering what he's up to. Because he used to be so. He used to be so prevalent. He was on a real tear there for a little bit, I was like. I'm not saying I agree with any of his ideology. I'm not saying that. But the fact that he has it, I respect it. And the fact that that guy literally, he's the embodiment of not giving a fuck.
Yeah.
You hear it in his music all the time.
Cost him like $1 billion, but...
He's like, I'll make another $1 billion. I don't give a shit. I started broke, I'll end broke. I don't give a shit.
That is true. That is very Buddha-esque in the sense of giving up all your attachments to worldly things. He seems to have no attachments.
Who was that guy that you sent me? Dionysus or something like that? That would do that?
No, Diogenes.
Diogenes, right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he'd go and live like a hermit or a homeless person, like
he would do
nights a week.
intentionally insane things just to see the reaction. Like he would walk backwards through the streets of Athens just so like people would be like, you know, what the fuck's wrong with this guy walking backwards through the like.
I think I'm talking about some of the difference. I didn't send that to you. I didn't TikTok you.
Maybe not.
Anyway, so there's a guy
in TikToking with somebody else.
Do we want to discuss this here?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been sliding up in other people's talk. What's a DM?
What do you mean? What's a DM?
In TikTok, is it still a DM?
It's still a DM.
I've been sliding.
You're just sharing talks in somebody's DMs.
Just sliding some talks. Just be like, if you're into it.
Listen, I don't care that you're sliding talks in other people's DMs, but they all need to also be in mine.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care if you share, but
if you're not sending me good shit, then like what are you good for?
Being a rock star's wife. Like, I don't care if you're slapping some hussies around, but you know what? You save the baby batter for me. Anyway, I want to know what his opinions are now, because things have only gotten
about
anything about Elon Musk, about X, about. Well, he had some, I think we could leave the anti-Semitism back in the 2022, I think is when he said it. We can leave that part out. But like, I just want to know, because he's just got a lot of energy and a lot of vibrance. I don't even like his music. Don't listen to most of it. I do listen to that one song though, where he's got the big flip-flops on and, you know, he's dancing. Such a, no. Anyway.
Yeah.
He's weird and goofy. I like that shit. Yeah, so what do you think he's up to?
Off the wall.
Do you ever think about like that with anybody else?
I mean, last I heard, he like moved all of his businesses out to Wyoming and he's just fucking chilling.
Gangster move right there. Gotta tell you. It's not buying an island, but it's close enough.
It's essentially buying a land island in the sense that it's cut off from the rest of the world. I don't know if he's like...
It ain't cut off from the rest of the world. That is central. Like, you are surrounded by land.
Nah, like you can go out in the middle of Wyoming and have nobody around you for miles.
This is 2 successive podcasts now. You're letting certain... Well, you want everyone to move out to Wyoming.
That's where he is.
Wyoming to become fucking here and Texas again?
It actually already is. It's one of the fastest growing population places in the country.
Population places?
Fastest growing population states in the country. I'm not wording that correctly, but you get the point.
You understand what we're talking about. So anyway, maybe... Just maybe.
David wants to go be neighbors with Kanye.
No, I don't. No, I don't. Because I'm almost absolutely certain there's going to be a 2:30 in the morning clang on my fucking door. You got to get out of here right now. They're coming for us. Like, who? And I'm not going to say it. He's going to say something crazy. Like, me Anunnaki, motherfucker. Like, God damn it. Do you have George Tuscaloosa with you? Are we going ancient aliens? What's going on? And then all of a sudden, some fucking gigantic explosion's going to go on. He's like, I paid for that. And then he's going to reveal later that he was testing me. And I'm going to be like, Kanye, that's 4 times this month. I can't do this anymore. You got to stop. So, no, I don't want to be Kanye's neighbor. Okay. But... could be fun too. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like it'd be like a what was that was that one the bad, the Odd Couple? It'd be like the Odd Couple, like that's just him. What? You know.
Never know quite what you're going to get when you tune in to WMD podcast.
The whole reason I brought it up.
Musings about what Kanye is up to.
Is that
163.
Maybe, just maybe, one of these little memes out there will be thinking about us tonight. Just maybe.
Got a pretty good shot. I mean, if they watch this, they're thinking about us while they're watching it. Whether they think about us after they turn it off is a whole
I didn't say they'll be
story.
thinking good things about us.
Oh,
they probably
nobody
be
does.
like, you know,
Nobody does.
David's face is stupid, his hair looks whack, and God knows what
Listen,
they'd
the
say
only people
about
that
your-
have good thoughts about us is like our
your
moms
glasses or your tie.
and our moms and like my daughter, just because she doesn't have thoughts at all right now. She's too young. But
rude.
Yeah.
I was just trying to
Somebody
put
loves
like
us.
a little cherry on top, just maybe. But anyway, Dane, let's get into the main
Let's
meme.
well, not to the main. Well, yeah.
Well, to the main course.
Yeah.
Let's
To
get
what we're
to
here to do.
The soup du jour.
Yeah, what we're here to do.
What is the soup du jour, Dane?
Whatever you got on your little
God
notepad
damn
over
it.
there.
It's the soup of the day. That sounds good. I think I'll have that.
Yeah.
I was trying to have you help me with a quote, but you never do that shit right. Anyway, Dumb and Dumber. The other 98% doesn't need consent.
Or they just don't understand it at all.
I guess it is different. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
Culture Corner. Krasenstein? Is that how you say his name?
I guess.
Kappa
Yeah.
is down with Law and Order. Boom, ba-dum, boom. Down. Bow, bow, bow. Somebody didn't have parents that fell asleep to that shit.
Oh, I did.
Boom. Oh, so
You kidding me? I was always over at grandma's house. She was always watching that shit.
You don't remember that bass solo at the end?
Yeah, I remember it.
Bow, bow, bow. Okay. I always remember that one. Epstein didn't kill himself. If you think Trump is, okay, so hold on. This is a softball. This was what I was telling you before.
Reel it back in. Start again.
If you think Trump is bad, you don't know dick.
I knew it. Nice.
You had to do it.
It wrote itself.
It was a 2-foot putt. You had to.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was good.
And then the main topic tonight is the feds want Elon to censor X. It's a good thing they weren't doing that before.
I know, right?
It's almost like
they just started it now that it got bad, now that he owns it.
now that we don't have control of it, we want it to be censored.
Correct. We want control of it.
Come on.
And they're using your money to do it, and it's targeting you. So I feel like you should be mad too, but we'll tell you more about it in the show.
All right.
So with that being said, David, we jumping in?
With Yeezy aside, let's get after it.
Let's do it. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 163, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/163. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction, and you can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. Jumping into the meme section today, we are talking about the other 98% again because they are a wealth
What are they, Dane?
of funny,
No, what are they?
stupid
On this
meme.
podcast, what are they?
Repeat offenders.
Repeat offenders.
You guys really got to help out the show so we can get David a soundboard and
You don't want me to have a soundboard. The amount
Nobody wants that.
of cerebral terrorism that I'll employ upon you, Dane.
All right. So the other 98%, they're back. They're back on the show. They love us so much they just can't stay
Don't
off.
call it a comeback.
They shared a meme, I don't know if earlier this week or maybe last week, doesn't matter. This one's kind of timelessly stupid. And the meme says, nameless faceless guy putting it up now, name says, quote, "Why is everything a, quote, handout except for generational wealth," end quote. And one word comes to mind when I read that, a word that apparently they're completely oblivious to: consent. It matters.
You fucked me up because the way that you worded that, how you phrased it, reminded me of Michael Scott and Toby.
Oh, about how
Why
he quoted something.
do you choose to be? Why are you the way that you are? I so hate the person you choose to be, and I feel like that's you and how you feel about the 98% likes.
Absolutely.
You could just be better. Could you just fucking be better, please?
Yeah.
By now.
So the meme underlying this, or at least the two things that are completely different that they're trying to equate to make some sort of insightful point. And I mean, listen, if you need any further faith and trust in humanity shaken for you, just go to a comment section and just watch these NPCs just drool over stupid shit like this. But anyway, the analogy or what they're trying to equate two things together is one has consent and the other one does not have consent. Right? Because when they talk about handouts, what most people, when they're talking in the political context of handouts, they're talking about government entitlement programs. They're talking about welfare. They're talking about Medicare. They're talking about Medicaid, Social Security, things like that. And that when people say, hey, our government programs that are handouts are either not efficiently run, they're wasteful, government is blowing all the money, blah, 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 or there's some people that are milking the system, in terms of things like welfare or whatever, and you point out those problems and you say it's a handout, it like gives lefties a visceral reaction. Because as we talked about on 161, they hate when you attack their government programs, because by attacking it as being susceptible to waste, fraud, and abuse, you're making a strong empirical argument for the fact that those programs probably don't deserve to exist. And they hate that because not only do they want to keep the current programs that exist, they want to expand them. Because again, as leftist totalitarians, they always think that they're going to be the ones in control of those programs. So when you challenge handouts, they don't like that. But they're trying to equate that handout with generational wealth. Well, what is generational wealth? It's one generation that earned a bunch of money. And as we all know, we can't take it with us when we die. So some people choose to set aside a certain portion of that wealth or all of it and say, I'm going to give it to the people that I love and adore the most. My spouse, my children, my grandchildren, whatever the case may be. Somebody voluntarily making provisions for their following generations. As you can see very clearly, the way that handouts are usually talked about in terms of government entitlement programs, which are funded by taxes, which are involuntarily taken from all of us, not with consent, and generational wealth is a consensual granting of money to subsequent generations. Those two things are not the same, not remotely the same. So, lefties, come on. I know you can't meme, but you got to do better than to make these blatant these comparisons that are blatantly completely different things.
Well, and again, too, it's disingenuous from it. You have to know the difference. If you're honestly asking that question, should you even be on that platform? Should you even have the right to use your thumbs on a cell phone?
Well, to David's point from 162, if you thought about it beforehand, you wouldn't do that.
Right. I mean, I think that most of us would just look at that and do the old eye roll.
Yeah.
I don't. Are you being intentionally obtuse? It sounds like you are, because there's a huge difference, because one individual acquired it. Well, I guess if they're, oh shit, I just had a realization. If they're communistic in theory or socialistic or whatever they probably choose to be, but their ideology is of that vein, then they wouldn't view you working and putting in time and effort to accrue that monetary wealth as yours. Because as we all know, going back to 162, your money is not your money, it's the government's money.
Right.
And it's the state's money. It's not But that's what they think. So they think that because even though you put the effort in to accrue it, or whatever the hell you did, to grow your wealth so that you can protect your children, would they say, oh, and you also have to hand over your, oh shit, they would say you have to hand over your guns because you don't have the right for it. Only the government has the right for it. So what are we arguing about here? Like, why does the government, they're literally arguing for socialism or, dare I say it, communism.
Right.
Because your money is not your money. And when you die, your family that you were using that money for, that you were amassing it for, so that they could have they could have wealth so that they wouldn't have to worry about that, so they'd be protected. Yeah. Because that's what it really is. All money is a vet or a vector for protection and safety.
Right.
And freedom to do what you want. So that'd be like if we were cavemen being like, he doesn't deserve that club. We should give that club to the High Council because he doesn't, that's the High Council's job.
Mm-hmm.
So he shouldn't be able to protect his family any better than mine, even though I just sat on my ass all day, didn't do any lifting or do anything I could have formed a club, but I didn't.
Yeah.
So now the government needs to protect both of us, and neither of us will have any protection.
Well, and this is the thing that, why we always say that they are in a cult of envy, because when you strip all of their ideology down and you pull all of the flowery sort of like smoke and mirrors game that they try to play with their word salad to kind of cover over what their bare intentions really are. Really everything that these people are about in their life, the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, the way they act, everything, it's about envy. Because think about this concept about just this concept of handouts. They love the idea of government handouts. And they say that we need to tax the rich because the rich need to pay for these government handouts. Well, why? Well, because the rich have money that they worked for, that these lazy, envious people, and I'm not talking about, all welfare government recipients, because some people do genuinely fall on hard times. I'm talking about like these limousine liberal leftists, these people that are just bleeding heart. We need to give all this money to the government because they're going to, reallocate it to the people that need it most, right? It's based on envy. We need to have the rich pay into this system because I'm not rich and I'm too lazy to put in the work or to have, the diligent effort and not give up on myself to work to get to a point to have wealth. And so I want to take it from them and give it to either these other people or even myself. So that's one side of the equation of why they're so confused and putting these two things that have nothing to do with each other together. On the other side, their cult of envy shows itself again because they see generational wealth in an envious way as well. My parents or my grandparents didn't work hard and apply themselves and have money to be able to give to me. So I'm mad when that person does it for their kids and they shouldn't be able to do it. When really what they should be saying is, my parents didn't do it for me, but I see these other people that did it for their kids. So I'm going to, maybe go up and shake that person's hand and say, you know what? Do you have any life lessons? Would you be a mentor? Can you kind of show me the way of how you were able to build your wealth to hand to your kids? Because I'd like to do the same for mine. But again, that thought never crosses their mind because again, they are in a cult of envy. And that cult of envy is never about self-improvement. It's about, I am where I am and it's the world's fault and I don't have any control over any of it. So I'm going to hate these other people that got more money than me, that have more money than me. And I'm going to advocate that it be taken away from them. And if they want to give it to their own kids, I'm going to shame them and say that's a handout because that's generational wealth. When again, and all of this is lost. Government handouts are coercively, involuntarily funded from taxpayers. Generational wealth handouts are voluntarily given, usually within the context of a family. Two completely separate things, but they don't see it because they're blinded by envy.
Well, they
That's
see the
what their
government as
entire
the daddy.
ideology is about.
They see government as daddy.
Yeah.
They think the government should run everything because
why?
Because they are
always going to be in control of it. They think.
Well, what I'll say too is like, this is, and I, better than most, or I know for a fact that life isn't fair. And yes, hard times, somebody might get a break and they get rich and you might not get the break and you're not destitute, but you're not rich and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Times are tough. Life is hard. I get it. But I'll tell you one thing that's not going to get you out of those tough times is this. It's a loser mentality. Like, you see the shit in sports all the time. Like, you see the guy that just stays after practice, puts the Cristiano Ronaldos, the Michael Jordans, the pick your favorite goat of, don't say Tom Brady, pick your favorite goat of anything. And what were they always doing? They're always working extra. They're the first ones in, last ones out, worked hard every day, and then went out and proved on the field. And that wasn't enough. So they just became relentless, and they relentlessly pursued perfection, which led to their greatness. Now, what's going on here? You could equate that to the father that went out and gained all that wealth to hand it down to his family. That's hard work. That's hard work. Now, when you lose a game and you go, well, it wasn't my fault. It was the coach had the wrong tactics, and the ref should have called that play. And, if this would have happened or this would, well, you still lost. And if you have that mentality, you're not going to go back to the training ground and put in the work to become better so that doesn't happen to you again. So what's going to happen? It's going to happen again. And then you're going to blame that. You're going to blame the system instead of just trying to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and do your goddamn best and put in some extra work and maybe improve your situation. Which is where, and it's a crazy little, I'm having epiphanies here. It's a crazy little vicious cycle where they need the government to keep them protected, and the government needs them to think that they need to be protected by the government, so they just keep feeding into it. It's like a parasitic relationship.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time. Like, the most revolutionary act you can commit today is to make yourself as self-sufficient as possible. And that, yes, that can be financially, but that's also mentally, physically, nutrition goes into physical, but also like maintaining healthy condition, going to the gym, working out, all that kind of stuff. All of these things that make you less reliant on somebody else. They don't always have to be in government. Less reliant on doctors, less reliant on nutritionists, less reliant on, restaurants that cook your food for you, less reliant on all of these things. The more self-sufficient you become, you are the walking embodiment of everything that they hate.
Freedom.
Because again, laziness and envy go hand in hand. David's, athlete analogy is apt. It is much, much easier to lose a game and blame everything except your own lack of work ethic, which then gives you the justification to continue to be lazy and not work because you just keep losing and keep blaming everybody else. Laziness and envy are hand in hand, and that is core to the ideology of leftists.
And they're two deadly sins, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Sloth and
envy.
Yep. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the good book all the way through, but it's got some good nuggets in it.
It's got some gems in it.
It's got some gems in it.
Well, I'm still working on David. I'll get him pulled over to the light side.
Who says your side's the light side? Just because only one side gets to tell their story. It's been my shtick for years. Listen to the other guy. He might have some good stuff too. You got to give equal opportunity. What are you, a liberal now? You don't want to hear any other arguments to your ideology? Oh, well, fine. You can dole out all your opinions, but you can't have them questioned.
This is a whole bonus episode.
I knew you were liberal. I knew it was in there somewhere, you son of a bitch. Anyway, on to Culture Corner. Krestenstein, Kramalama Ding Dong is down with...
David's really proud of that one.
I like Law and Order.
So
at least the intro.
I believe this is Brian Krasenstein. His brother Ed is also on
Brian and Ed
and X. And honestly, if you blank out the name or the picture or whatever, I couldn't tell you which one's which because they say the same stupid shit either way. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to learn that they're run by the same person. They just gave two different brothers' names to grow two different pages and then get twice the amount of money. But anyway, so Krasenstein, Brian, I believe, is celebrating the decade-long plus, in two cases, prison sentences of a few of the Proud Boys for their participation in the January 6th protests. And Krasenstein has this to say. He says, I wonder if the Proud Boys are proud now. And he said the recent prison sentences. Dominic Pizzola got 10 years. Zachary Rell got 15 years. Joseph Biggs got 17 years. Krasenstein goes on, make no mistake about it, these are bad people. They were convicted by juries of their peers for crimes which have maximum sentencing guidelines in the decades. I support law and order, which includes people who commit crimes, are convicted of those crimes, and are sentenced for those crimes of having to serve the time they are sentenced to. You can pretend that I'm a, quote, bad person for supporting law and order, but it's usually the bad people who do not support law and order.
Isn't that interesting?
And that last line is my favorite.
Isn't that interesting?
It's usually the bad people who do not support law and order. Really? That the argument you want to make, Brian?
Well,
that the hill you want to plant your flag on? I don't think you're going to have a good time. We're going to explain it to you in this segment.
I just like how he subtly just avoided all objections by just saying, you can pretend I'm a bad person. It's like, dang it.
I was really going to think you were.
I was
now
just
I'm
about to call him a bad person, but then he made it illegal. And I can't be a criminal because then he's going to cheer when I go to jail. Damn you, Krasenstein, and your meddling ways. Fucking idiot.
I would have thought you were a bad person and weren't for you meddling Krasenstein.
Until you told me that you weren't.
So here's the thing that the main thing I wanted to say about this is these three gentlemen were sentenced to, you heard, 10 years, 15 years, and 17 years respectively. Krasenstein just thinks that's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone aside from like victims' parents of like murdered victims' parents. Like they don't even cheer. Who celebrates somebody going to jail?
Yeah.
What type of, again, Krasenstein, you can say that we're pretending, but I think if you're reveling in somebody else losing a large portion of their life for not a victimless. Well, yeah. Was there any harm?
I would say it's victimless. I don't know the exact charges of these three, but I don't think that there was any sort of charging of like, committing assault on any of the, the Capitol Police, right, or anything else like that. I'm pretty sure that they were all convicted of conspiracy to basically coordinate what happened on January 6th. Basically, they called up some of their buddies and they're like, hey, we're going to storm the Capitol today. And again, I might be speaking out of turn. They were probably charged with more things than that. But the point is that this is what they did. And we talked about this on last week's episode on 162 about drawing the distinction between one group of protests which targeted their neighbors and innocent business owners and burned some of them to the ground, and another protest who took grievances with their government straight to the source. They went straight to the government, and again, you can say that they were out of pocket and they're completely baseless, that the election was stolen and all of their reasons for being there were unjustified or whatever. Okay, let's grant that for the sake of the argument. But the point is, they had problems with their government, real or imagined, and they went straight to the government to address those grievances. And they didn't burn the Capitol to the ground. They got in it and they walked around. They walked around. The only people that died that day were people in the crowd, not Capitol Police, not any politicians, not any staff that worked on Capitol Hill, people in the crowd. So this idea that these guys did something uniquely heinous and that are worthy of 10, 15, and 17-year prison sentences, let alone you being a complete and utter piece of shit to take joy or pleasure in that, really belies every time. I'm sure Krasenstein, just like most people on the left, are all about our democracy is sacred and democracy, democracy, democracy. One of the absolute most important pillars and hallmarks of democracy is redressing your grievances with your government. And you might disagree with how that's done, but who was it? I know AOC rephrased it, but I want to say that it was MLK or somebody, one of the civil rights leaders, who said that, what was it? Riots are the voice of the voiceless or something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
That sounds like a Malcolm X thing.
Like basically when people are ignored for a long enough period of time, they do the last thing that they have available to them short of full-on full-blown violence, is they storm public buildings and stuff like that. And that's what happened on January 6th at its worst. And you're going to say that these people are worthy of 10, 15, and 17-year prison sentences? Yeah, I don't got to pretend you're a bad person, Brian. You're a complete and utter piece of shit.
Well, here you go, Brian. Let's just do some quick maths here. Okay, so Dane mentioned BLM protests and then burning down businesses. That affected American individuals, like citizens.
Innocent
So that wasn't victimless. There were victims there. And I think what happened on January 6th was a bunch of the people that didn't give a fuck about, I had another point to make. They didn't care about those protests until all of a sudden Molotovs were starting to be lobbed at government buildings.
Yeah.
Or at government officials' front yards. Then it got to be too far out of hand. We gotta rein these people in. There's evidence, number one, that they don't have your best interest in mind. And then number two, I think January 6th was the darkest day in American history. Okay. Grant you that. Thought there was a couple of other ones. Mentioned them before. Go back and listen to that. I think they made a bunch of the people that made all of our lives a living hell and are very only interested in their own profit and gain.
Yeah.
That aren't doing their job well on Capitol Hill. A bunch of people that felt disinherited by this country showed up. And I'd say that they took it too far when they went in, but hey, that's what they did. And the crime was they scared a bunch of the people.
Yeah. They made their morning mildly uncomfortable.
That weren't listening to them.
Yeah.
That's their job too, right? To represent the American people in their station. They're not doing their job. The people showed up to tell them that they weren't happy about it. And now we have to send them to jail for 20 years?
10, 15, and 17.
And we can't even prove...
Terrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, got like 22 years.
And the FBI won't even say that they definitely didn't have any agents. I believe they pled the fifth.
Mm-hmm.
So when are we going to indict them and send them to...
aren't you a big fan of Law and Order, Krasenstein?
Yeah, Krasenstein. We got to make sure that we get it all done. Not just
are there
people's...
two levels of Law and Order where if the citizens break the law, they go to jail, and if agents of the state break the law or
act outside of it,
or what's the word? Entrapment, coercing people who otherwise may not have broken the law to broke the law, encouraging them to do so. That no criminal charges for them because they're agents of the state.
But if I drive a getaway car, I'm an accomplice.
Yeah.
So Brian, you're such a huge fan of Law and Order. We have to get all of them. We have to round up all of them. And again, too, there seems to be a common theme here. It was in the meme section, and now we found it in the culture corner. It seems like Krasenstein thinks that his side is always going to be in power too. Because remember, tomorrow's laws are today's freedoms. Make no mistake about it. And then all of a sudden, that law that you liked to not have, or that freedom that you like to have, well, maybe it's not so convenient for the other side. So when they get in power, they take that away from you. Oh, I don't know, abortion. You remember when those guys, when you flipped your shit about abortion? Imagine that, but now they're actually pissed off at you. And they're going to start making other things a hell of a lot more illegal, or the punishments for them a lot more strict. So, I don't know, Brian. Maybe, again, look a little further into the future. Maybe have some empathy for another human being and don't just take... And I'm sure he met all these people, talked to them personally, got their... spent some real quality time with them.
That's how he knows for a fact they're bad people.
Knows for a fact that they're bad people too.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't agree with any of their things.
Yeah.
Any of their principles.
And that last part of the tweet, and again, I know he's saying this because other people are calling him a bad person for taking pleasure in these people's prison sentences. But he's still not exactly running away from this concept of equating morality and law. And David's telling you to look in the future and anticipate that the other side might use it against you someday. I'll tell you just to look in the past, because there is no equating between morality and law. To any extent that law is morally justified, it aligns with already pre-existing moral truths, like don't kill people and don't take their stuff. But you can find all throughout history governments that made highly immoral things illegal or made highly immoral things legal. And so when you equate those two by saying you can pretend that I'm a bad person for supporting law and order, again, making no distinction, just saying the concept of law and order, law and order is universally good but it's usually the bad people who do not support law and order. Good luck telling that to people in 1930s and 1940s Germany, or the kulaks in Russia under Stalin's reign, or the victims of Mao Zedong or Pol Pot, or the list goes on and on and on. They broke the law. And so when they were lined up in front of those trenches or put in those camps, their execution was legal. So again, Brian, when you try to make these blanket statements like, I support law and order, so I'm a good person, and usually only bad people don't like law and order, you are missing a whole spectrum. Like if you were trying to see the whole visual spectrum, you're like seeing like one color in the spectrum by not acknowledging all of these other things that are implied by, I universally support law and order, and that makes me a good person. No, it doesn't, Brian. As a matter of fact, if you want to count the deaths of just the 20th century alone, which by some estimates is north of 200 million by democide. And democide is defined as people killed by their own governments, not in acts of war, not a foreign power bombing them, not a terrorist act, not a murder from another private citizen, deaths by their own government. The lowball estimate is 200 million people in the 20th century alone. And every single one of them, under every single one of those regimes, were outside of law and order. So if you want to throw your hat on that side of the ring and you want to plant your flag on that hill and die on that, Krasenstein, by saying you're a good person because you support law and order, and you want to throw people in cages because they were involved in a political protest that you didn't agree with, again, anybody who's not in your little echo chamber sees you for the piece of shit that you are. And saying that everybody else is just pretending that you're a bad person if they don't agree with you, again, I'm going to let history judge you, and it's not going to do so favorably.
Well, then he must be, and I'm sure he's going to argue or would argue vehemently to the contrary, but he must be a huge fan of systemic racism then. Because what about, he's such a big fan of law and order, what about all these crimes that are, victimless as well, didn't hurt anybody else, selling drugs to other people of consenting age at least, and then he had to do it because he had to pay his bail bond, but he had to break his, probation to be able to support his family, to be able to survive out in the world. Oh, but wait, he can't get a job because he's a felon. So he goes back to the one thing that he knows how to do, selling drugs. And he gets busted again and goes back into prison because he can't, either he sells the drugs and can pay his bail or his probation, or he doesn't sell the drugs and starves to death. Do you like that, Brian? Like, I mean, and that was...
It didn't even have to be drugs. Eric Garner was choked out to death over selling loose cigarettes because it was illegal in New York City.
Yeah, God damn it.
You support that law and order, Brian?
All criminals are evil, right, Brian?
Yeah.
So before you start clapping and firing off your little confetti poppers or whatever the fuck you're doing over there, like, think about it. And again, I feel like all of these things we could just go back to, like, did you think before you wrote that? Did you think before you press send or publish or whatever the fuck you pressed on your app? I'm going to go ahead and bet you didn't. And I'm going to go ahead and you're so up your own ass with feeling how morally righteous you were, you couldn't wait to post it. But you left all those flaws in there that unfortunately we're not pretending right now. You are an asshole. You are a prick for doing that. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
So
going from one major dick to the biggest dick of all.
I would say he's in the running. It was, who would it be? It would be Nixon, him, and then it'd have to be LBJ.
What? In terms of Biggest threats to American national security. That's your
No,
list?
the biggest dicks.
Oh, biggest dicks. Yeah. Well, Lyndon B. Oh, okay. Johnson.
The inside
And then
base.
Dick
Well, the
Nixon.
inside baseball was he had a huge fucking hammer.
Oh, yeah.
And he would like literally when he's getting his like briefings, he'd take a shit and he would walk. Yeah, he'd get like reporters and he'd like walk around naked with them and shit. Because apparently he just had the hammer.
Well, an even bigger dick than all of them is none other than Dick Cheney, who up until about 5 minutes ago was, and deservedly so, pretty universally reviled.
Isn't he dead?
Reviled by...
Shouldn't he be dead?
He should be. Reviled by not only the Bryan Krasensteins of the world, and by that I'm just using him as a proxy for American liberals, but even by a lot of Republicans that after the George W. Bush administration ended thought, you know, in hindsight, maybe they weren't really doing what's best for us.
I feel like they lied to us on purpose, huh?
And the reason why he was universally reviled but stopped being so about what's in the cosmic equivalent of 5 minutes ago is because Orange Man came along. And apparently Donald Trump has this magical power of washing away all of the sins of the worst people in the world. Because once Donald Trump came upon the scene, not only was George W. Bush, who was literally had pictures of himself like vandalized to have devil horns on, and so was Dick Cheney, and again, deservedly so, because they were responsible for, at minimum, the death of 1 million innocent Iraqi civilians, let alone American troops and everything else on the lies of the weapons of mass destruction that they pushed forward, is Donald Trump comes along, and now these guys aren't so bad. Now George W. Bush is just this lovable kind of...
He's a painter now.
Artist on the side, right, who like does some hobnobbing around with the Obamas and other past presidents, and he's just kind of a funny guy. And don't you know, Ellen DeGeneres and George W. Bush have such a great friendship, and Dick Cheney's thrown right in with that. Well, we have a 26-second clip from Dick Cheney where he's going to warn you, America, the moral titan that is Dick Cheney is going to warn you, America, about dangers to America. And it has nothing to do with him, oddly enough. So let's hear what Dick has to say.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election, and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it.
So in our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump, according to none other than Dick Cheney. And that got me thinking. Could I possibly come up with a handful, maybe a list of 10 of people who were greater threats to America's national security than Donald Trump? And it took me about 30 seconds and was really easy. Abraham Lincoln, who blockaded American cities, made medicine contrabands of war, and shelled American citizens. Woodrow Wilson, who lied us into World War I, which was, by all historical accounts, the stage that set for World War II to pop off just a few years later. FDR, who, with his New Deal and the confiscation of gold and everything else he did to completely destroy the domestic economy, not to mention lead us headlong into what eventually became the Cold War after he passed away and Truman took over. Or forgot Truman on this list, but let's throw Truman on there while we're here, since he bombed 2 cities full of innocent Japanese civilians. Or what about Allen Dulles, the leader of the CIA back in the 1930s and 40s, who was basically the progenitor of the modern deep state, where none of these people that are elected are running all of our lives, regardless of the politicians that come and go. How about J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, who the FBI is now completely weaponized against an entire political faction.
And being used against Trump, by the way.
And half of the country who supports Trump, and Hoover, who was involved in things like blackmailing Martin Luther King Jr. and spying on people, again, illegally in violation of the Constitution, that would be pretty risky for our constitutional republic. What about the Federal Reserve and every single Federal Reserve chairman that has overseen the 95% reduction in the value of the dollar since 1913? How about Teddy Roosevelt and his always go to war mentality that set the precedent for all of the U.S. imperialism that followed after him? How about David's buddy LBJ and his Great Society, who said, and I quote, "We will have those people voting for us for the next 100 years." How about SCOTUS and the Supreme Court of the United States from roughly about 1938 up until very recently, where your rights were very subjective and they were just going to read into the Constitution whatever they needed to give the government more power and constitutional cover to get away with whatever they wanted. And last on my list,
it has to be
Dick fucking Cheney himself.
It's like he's
Mr. Lie about weapons of mass destruction, Mr. Enrich himself via Halliburton through the illegal and unconstitutional Iraq war and everything that came with the George W. Bush administration. All of these people have been light years ahead of Donald Trump in terms of being a, quote, threat to our republic.
What republic is he referring to?
The one that he's not in control of, and the powers that think like him.
Well, the one that he was a part of, because it's not the republic that I'm a part of.
Right.
I don't want an endless war. I don't want to bomb somebody. I don't want any death or destruction. I'd rather fix things here. But as one of the biggest proponents of what is it called again? What's Eisenhower called it that? It's a beautiful phrase. Very, that's right. The military industrial complex. The same guy that was a CEO of Halliburton and then became vice president. And then somehow Halliburton gets a no-bid contract to rebuild all the buildings that they're bombing over there.
Mm.
That sound like Dick Cheney to you? Oh, by the way, about stolen elections. How did they get their first term? Do you remember how they got their first term?
Pretty suspect ongoing.
Happened right down here.
Yeah.
Apparently, and I've seen some altacacas, a couple of old nannies couldn't tell the difference between that bubble and this bubble and accidentally voted for Bush instead of Gore. Oh, shit. So there's a huge recount, then Gore in his typical yellow-bellied self rolls over and just said, concede the election. And that was more of a Clinton.
Yeah, I was going to say Gore somehow became Bill.
He's fuck. I can't dig him out right now. Anyway, all I'm saying is that all the things he just said, and I think you said it too, he said lied at least 4 or 5 times in there.
Easily.
You literally lied to get us into the war, like you said.
Walking pot and kettle.
Jesus Christ. And then we were halfway through the war and you're like, we'll just keep going. Like 10 years into the war, which was, we didn't know at the time, but we were only halfway done with it. We knew that they lied to us about, Colin Powell said they lied to me and I lied to you. I lied to the UN.
Lied to the UN, yeah.
Holy shit. It's like you got your whole cabinet, your whole campaign, everything was built
Everything
on a lie.
about your existence is a lie, Dick Cheney.
The fact that you're a human is a lie. We all know you're one of those lizard Illuminati Anunnaki motherfuckers. With just blatant disregard for everything that our Constitution stood for. I don't know what republic he's talking about. You know what? We've made jokes about him being a Sith Lord. He's literally saying the republic.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, I mean,
if he shot shitty 1970s electricity out of his fucking fingers, it would not surprise me.
He's trying to play to the Republican base that, I mean, it is true. We say it on this podcast all the time. The United States is not a democracy, despite what, everybody says on mainstream media, et cetera, et cetera. The United States is a constitutional republic. The big difference between those two, and the reason why this country was explicitly set up not to be a democracy, is because democracy is simply tyranny by majority. The founders knew that. They studied the Greeks. They studied the Romans. They studied early democratic experiments, and they studied what the difference is between democracies and republics and how democracies can be abused. If you have a simple majority rules, then you can get the people who want the power to just buy out that majority or that simple majority, and then you get tyranny by majority. So what did the founders do in their infinite wisdom? They said, we're not going to set up a democracy. We're going to set up a constitutional republic, similar to the original Roman Republic before Caesar took it and turned it into an empire. And the difference is what a republic is it says, okay, you still get a representative aspect to it where you get to vote for the people that make the laws for you and stuff. But a constitutional republic says you, the people, have rights, and the power of the government stops where it infringes on those rights. It's not a simple, if you get 51% to vote for it, they can do whatever they want. There is still this bulwark, this dam that holds back even a tyranny of majority from violating on the rights of the individual, because the rights of the individual are sacred. That's the difference between a republic and a democracy. And when Cheney uses the term republic, he is giving lip service to what is true and historically and accurately correct about America, that it is a republic, it's not a democracy. But for him to say that Donald Trump in 246 years is the most dangerous aspect of that is, I mean, it's so wrong. It's so disingenuous coming from somebody like him whose entire political career is built on lies. It's so disingenuous that it borders on, what's the word I'm looking for?
Lunacy?
I mean, it's definitely lunacy, but like, I can't even imagine the level of psychopathy that somebody must have to be who he is and claim that somebody like Trump, in light of all of the historical examples, or his own self, of that person being a bigger threat than him. I can't even fathom it. Because the worst thing that Donald Trump did,
it's beyond fathom,
was say, I don't think that everything was above board in terms of this election. Didn't start any new wars during his presidency, up until the massive spending, and granted, he did have deficit spending every year. It wasn't just COVID. But other than the massive overspending of COVID, his deficit spending was no worse than the presidents immediately preceding him, or definitely since then. The economy was doing quite well. I'm not going to say that it was exclusively because of him, but he wasn't destroying it. So by all accounts, his record as a president is at least as good, if not marginally better, than all of his immediate predecessors and successors. So that can't be it. So really, what you're saying makes him the worst, most dangerous person in 246 years of American history is because he questioned the legitimacy of election, which his own opponent did to him after the 2016 election. And
continued
which
to
Gore
do it
did to
4 years
you
afterwards.
after the 2000 election. And which in several elections all throughout human history, this has happened, where the losing side has questioned the legitimacy of the election. And that makes him the worst person in American history. You're fucking insane if you honestly and genuinely believe that. We know Dick Cheney is, but for those of you out there who heard what Dick Cheney had to say and think that he might be right, you're fucking nuts. You need a lobotomy if you think that that's true.
I mean, I can't say anything more. It's just, it's palpably moronic if you actually believe. And if we're even talking to Dick Cheney anymore, and I'm pretty sure, I thought this clip came out a while ago, and maybe it's making its rounds again. So again, if we skipped over it before and now we're just coming back to it, apologies, but still, but it runs through every facet of our government nowadays. Just a blatant disregard of their own accountability, where you have people shouting down gay marriage and then going and fucking tapping their goddamn toe in a Minnesota bathroom. You doth protest too loudly. You're the biggest sinner, and you're saying that my sin, what was that biblical phrase? Before you remove the plank from your eye, before you remove the splinter from mine. Yeah. Like, AOC came out after fucking Biden won and wanted to make a list. where Schindler was like, oh, this is a very good idea. I like these lists. But like, I don't know. I agree with you. A weird scenario where I actually think lobotomization is the only answer. If you take any life lessons or any direction from Dick Cheney, you should probably be lobotomized. The guy that's known for the biggest lie that cost us 20 years of war.
Over $1 trillion.
Over $1 trillion. The death and destruction, not only on our side, but on the Iraqi and Afghanistani sides. And God only knows how many other bombs we accidentally dropped on other countries and didn't talk about. I just, to think that whole thing was a big ploy for corporate and the military industrial complex to make an insane amount of money. That's if you want to talk about treason, I'd say that's pretty high up there. Lying to the entire people to get us to go into a war so that some can make a profit off of it. If you want to listen to it, but again, we seem to be pretty lax on treason nowadays too. So what do I know? Yeah.
I mean, and just the metrics on this, because this was posted on September 7th, 2023, and it was the Twitter account that posted it was Republicans against Trump. So whatever. And, you know, usually if you don't know what a ratio is usually when you have a whole bunch of comments and very few likes on a post. Usually what's happening is the poster is getting dragged in the comments because very few people are liking or agreeing what it has to say. And the metrics on this thing is 47,000 likes. And what is this as we sit here today is what? September 8th. So this was posted a day ago. It's got 47,000 likes, 12.5 thousand reposts, and I can't see how many comments, but nearly 50,000, nearly enough people to fill a professional NFL football stadium. Like this and agree with this. See Dick fucking Cheney having the audacity to say anybody, Trump or otherwise, is a greater threat to the American Republic than even he himself. And 50,000 people think that that's just great. Now, again, granted, I know there are a lot of bots on Twitter, and so how many of those likes are actually bots and not real people, I don't know. But 50,000, even if it's half of that, if it's 1/10 of that, if 5,000 people look at that, I don't care how hopelessly brainwashed you are, how could you possibly have such a goldfish of a memory that you can't remember who the fuck Dick Cheney is, what he stands for, and just who he is as a completely, I mean, if Krasenstein is a bad person, Dick Cheney is like Satan incarnate without being, too hyperbolic.
I mean, I think you're kind of underselling it there. It's literally Dick Cheney coming out and saying that he's the biggest threat and he's a liar. That's like Vlad the Impaler coming out and saying, impaling people is wrong. Guy. I saw him do it. I saw him do it to a fucking roly-poly, and it really threw me off. I can't be in the same room with that guy.
And I mean, as a matter of fact, David and I are not Trump supporters. We don't hate the guy. We don't have TDS, but we also don't support the guy. We wouldn't vote for him, all of that kind of stuff. But having somebody like Dick Cheney come out against him is just about enough to make you say there might be a redeeming quality about Trump.
It's like if you doth protest too loudly. It's like if people that we hate are hating this guy, it's like, well, the enemy of my enemy must be my friend then, right?
Yeah. Are you trying to make us like him? I don't follow
make me like him.
What's your effort here? So
fucking, we're going to do the Bo Burnham. They're really going to make me vote for Joe Biden. They're really going to make me vote for Donald Trump. It's so ridiculous.
If no other reason than just to hopefully give Dick Cheney his long overdue fucking heart attack.
How is the best case scenario, Joe? God damn it. You guys really don't give a fuck.
They don't.
But anyway, enough of our gnashing of teeth about that piece of shit Dick. Are you ready to get into the meat and potatoes of this episode?
Let's do it. What we're talking today is the government using your money against you to censor you.
I'm sure this is the first time that's happened.
Now, if you're aware. And again, I feel like we talk about Elon on this show a lot, but I really also don't think that it's 100% our fault.
It's their fault. They keep bringing him up. They keep making him the main story of everything.
Keep going after him, and it's just, it makes no sense. But anyway.
We talk about Trump and we talk about Elon more than any other two fucks in the whole political system.
Right.
One of them isn't even a politician, by the way. And one of them played one on TV for about 4 years. Yeah. So all we know, we're talking politics about two non-politicians.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So if you'll remember when Elon took over Twitter, now called X, and he released the Twitter files, which laid bare for all of us what we had long suspected, is that the federal government was colluding with social media platforms, at least in the context of Twitter specifically, to basically control the public discussion. By blatantly covering up and covering for the Hunter Biden laptop story before the 2020 election, which we all found out that was exactly what they were doing.
51 FBI.
Yeah. FBI and intelligence officials signed the letter. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which we all know was bullshit and that everything about the laptop was true. So, hey, Krasenstein,
you might want to look into that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Law and Order. But it didn't stop there. And it hasn't stopped there. By Elon's accounts himself, the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, has cost Twitter roughly half of its valuation. So about $22 billion in ad revenue, and they're doing it with help from the federal government, from your tax dollars. Because we have a report here from, the ADL was thanking the federal government for sending them money for the ADL organizing advertiser boycotts of Twitter, of X. And David and I have talked about it on the podcast before. The reason why Elon's business model of Twitter Blue, paying $8 a month so you can post more and get more engagement and all that kind of stuff, why it's so critical to the long-term survivability of X is because if they're reliant on ad revenue, then pressure from groups like the Anti-Defamation League on false accusations of anti-Semitism, bigotry, et cetera, can cripple those efforts, because advertisers are notoriously afraid of any sort of negative press. So when the ADL publishes reports and accuses Elon or X or a bunch of users of being anti-Semitic or racists or bigots or anti-LGBTQ or just get in line or for whatever your pejorative of the day is, advertisers run from that like the plague. So they don't want to advertise on X anymore, which means revenue out the door, which means you're putting X at a severe risk of no longer being a going concern. And that's a big problem. A problem so big that Elon is considering suing the Anti-Defamation League for none other than defamation. Because they're accusing him of things like anti-Semitism when there is absolutely nothing supporting that at all. And they're doing it with money from the federal government taken from you through taxes, which if you think that the ADL is just organizing these boycotts to get people away from Twitter because they got these unseedy bad accounts that tweet these bad things, these pro-Nazi or anti-Jewish or anti-Black or anti-LGBTQ or anti-anything. If you think that that's all the censorship is about, you have been asleep for the last couple of years, because you're next.
You mean the same platform that had pornography strewn about it, and the same platform where you could watch the Taliban have a blue check mark next to it and watch them behead people?
Not just any pornography, by the way. Kiddie porn.
Oh, shit. We don't need another strike.
No. I'm just saying that was a big problem at Twitter, and now it's all over at, what did that other platform they all moved to?
Oh.
Mastodon, I think.
I thought it was Tribel.
Well, Tribel is like set themselves up to be, but they moved to another platform, and it was like, we talked about it.
If you think that Twitter in and of itself wasn't a psyop from the government, then I got news for you. Didn't Elon say that he took over Twitter and like literally fired 80% of the company? Yeah. And I remember we had a video up of some girl like walking you through the facets of her day at Twitter. She stopped off when she got there to get a coffee that was downstairs.
Yeah.
Then they met for like 10 minutes at like a team building exercise. Then she went and got lunch at like one of the 5-star restaurants that were there or some shit. And then she did a yoga class. And then she, you know, relaxed in the bar with a couple of her workers before she went home for the day. I was like, did you work at all? Did you sit down at the computer and work at all? Like, no, but
She made like north of 100K to
if
do all
that
this,
doesn't sound like the government overinflated, overbloated, just throwing money at nothing and just having a bunch of shit that they don't even know what it does. That sounds like government owned and operated to me. What about the ADLS, right? Or ADL. So what's ADLS? Is that the Lou Gehrig's disease or something like that?
No, that's ALS.
Okay. Thought I 40 and slipped that one. But like, I don't know. And of course, the thing that we say on this podcast all the time is like, if you're from the government, whatever bureau that you're a part of, it's doing the opposite. If you're introducing some legislature and it says the Freedom Fund is probably going to enslave you. Like if it says it's the Patriot, it's probably going to make you the most unpatriot. You see where we're going. We've said it before. And of course, the Anti-Defamation League is going to defame Elon doing the thing that it's not supposed to do, that's supposed to stop, it's engaged in. It's like, this is so government, it's ridiculous. It's just frothing at the mouth with it.
And that's the thing. Like, so this was happening before Elon, is when there was an unsightly, unseemly poster on Twitter and the ADL, they got themselves in ADL sites. ADL would call up Twitter and say, you need to ban this page or throttle it or do some other sort of, whether short of banning, could have been shadow banning, whatever. But you need to do something to this page. And Twitter dutifully followed orders. And in exchange for dutifully following orders, its advertiser revenue was left to flow unabated, which is how they could pay 20-something-year-old brainlets, you know, $100,000 a year to just walk around all day and grab coffee and make TikToks about how they didn't do anything all day. That's why Elon had to fire 80% of the staff, because according to Elon, since he has stepped in, at the ADL's prodding, U.S. advertising revenue is down 60% because the ADL tells these advertisers Elon and Twitter are anti-Semitic. No proof for that at all. Because Elon will not cave and ban some of these pages that the ADL tells them to ban. So the ADL organizes boycotts with advertisers in order to get them to not give revenue to Twitter X, which cripples it. And how ADL is doing this is with federal money, your tax dollars. And here's the thing, ADL's charter is all about targeting specifically anti-Semitism. It's a nonprofit that, you know, basically targets people that are like actual real anti-Semites who people say, you know, Jews are to blame for everything, all that kind of stuff. That's what's in ADL's charter.
Kanye.
But there was, Kanye would be one.
I knew he was coming back.
Would be a primary target.
I knew he was coming back.
But the ADL doesn't stop there. And they don't stay within their charter. They smeared the Libs of TikTok account as being anti-LGBTQ, which again, we talked about this when they were being targeted a few months ago. That TikTok account's not anti-LGBTQ. It reposts videos of people in the LGBTQ camp in their own words, saying what they do, propagandizing your kids and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you come to your own conclusions and say, I don't think they should be talking to my kids about these sort of sensitive subjects, that's not anti-LGBTQ. That's anti that person who's talking to your kids about unapproved subjects. But the ADL smeared that page trying to get it banned off of Twitter. And guess what? Chaya Raichik, who runs Libs of TikTok, is an Orthodox Jew. So, you know, again, this whole idea that ADL is fighting the good fight against anti-Semites and they're just trying to oppose hatefulness and bigotry any way they can. No, they're fucking not. And you cannot be dense enough to just fall for that excuse.
It's a vector of control.
It is exactly that. It is a vector of control. It's because the federal government itself, and again, the brainlets like the Krasensteins of the world will tell you, it's a private company, they can do whatever they want. Because the government cannot suspend free speech without violating the First Amendment, the ADL can. But again, that whole government-private distinction really gets blurred when the federal government is saying, here, take these tax dollars so that you can organize boycotts to take down this private company because they won't ban pages that we want you to ban.
There's a loophole there, Dane. They're not getting rid of that. They're just removing funding for that. They're not preventing you from having free speech. They're just preventing you from being heard with your free speech, or having the money to support yourself, to have more free speech, or to have people hear your speech. So no, Dane, they're not directly violating it. It's a nice little workaround. It's like, you can, do you like football games? Do you like traveling? Do you like seeing grandma on the holidays? Well, then I guess you should get your, it's your choice though. It's your choice. Right. We're not gonna kill you for not doing it, but we're just not going to allow you to be free for not doing it. It's like, you're doing everything, but you're still killing me. You're still killing me. You're just letting me starve to death, which is more inhumane than just lopping my head off in the first place.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well,
but they're so smart, the wicked smart.
And again, here's the thing, right? The ADL itself as an institution, if this is all it was doing, right? If it was organizing boycotts because it doesn't agree with the speech that's on Twitter X's platform, okay, that's one thing. We would disagree with it and we would still call out that sort of like busybody type mentality for being exactly that and what it is. But again, when it's taking public funds from the federal government in order to carry out these activities, that's a massive problem. Massive problem. Because again, private citizens can boycott anything they want for any reason they want, and that is what it is. And we can have our objections and fine. But when the government is specifically working around a very specific, it's the First Amendment, a very specific prohibition from engaging in policing and censoring the freedom of speech and using a nonprofit platform by funding it in order to go out and do these things, that's a massive problem.
And this is all while...
And it's not stopping with Lives of TikTok. It's not stopping with actual accounts on X that may tweet unseemly things about Jews or minorities or LGBTQ or anything else, right? That may genuinely be hateful. That ain't where it stops. It stops with anybody, and we saw it all throughout COVID. It stops with anybody who speaks out against or does not fall in line with the party line, whatever the regime wants people to think or say or believe. That's where it stops. And that's you.
But that's how the door opens.
You're paying for this with your taxes.
Right.
So you should be very, very pissed off. As pissed off as I hope it's coming across that I am.
No. I mean, it's just so stereotypical. And this is all the while with the child porn on this site.
It was pre-Elon.
They weren't so concerned with protecting the innocent.
Correct.
They were more concerned with language and how it might make some people feel with little bellies.
Correct.
Like, again, I don't know what's happening to our society right now, but when you're not protecting the innocent and the ones that can't protect themselves, then what? Then let's just call it. Let's call it a day.
Yeah.
The U.S. was a fun little experiment. It's over now. And we'll see what dystopian future lies ahead of us. Because again, it's us. We're allowing this to happen. Not calling for violence. I'm just calling for a change in the way that we do things here. And it's getting to the point where you can't just turn a blind eye and say somebody else is going to fix it anymore. Because no one's fixing it. It's a huge fucking problem and no one's fixing it. And they're using your money and my money and his money to do it.
Well,
so we're accomplices. In one way or another, we are accomplices to them ruining our country. So you can't turn a blind eye anymore. You have to at least engage. That's all I'll say.
David brings up a good point about them not objecting to all of the kiddie porn that was on Twitter beforehand, and about how what people choose to get outraged about is just as important often as what they choose not to get outraged about. And when you look at the juxtaposition between those two things, that will tell you more about the content of their character than anything we could say. So let that speak for itself about
if we catch another strike from
what the ADL's motivations are.
If we catch another strike from this, it's like, all right, maybe we'll team up. We'll go to Mr. Musk's store. Excuse me, Mr. Musk. We've got grievances to be aired. Can we join your defamation?
Yeah. Can we get a cut of that $22 billion lawsuit you have against the ADL?
Our little hats in our hands and our big doe eyes.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has cheered me up so much. I've lost my words. So
samesies.
Well, on that bright note, episode 163, Dane Wise Gamgee. Where can they find this?
Find episode 163 at wmdpodcast.com/163. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. And they can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. They can link up with us on Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok. Get in the private members only Facebook page at $5 a month or support. Just go to the Support Our Work tab over at wmdpodcast.com. While you're there, jump on that email list on the homepage. That's how you can always stay in contact with the show and make sure that if we ever get nuked off your favorite platform, thanks to the ADL teaming up with people to get us banned off of whatever platform they choose, we'll always be able to reach you there on that email list and tell you where we're popping up next. You can also get on that automated text service at 610-596-WMDP. That's 610-596-9637 to get real-time updates. It tells you exactly when the episodes go live. It tells you if anything happens to us, like a couple weeks ago when we got banned off YouTube, you would have got a notification about that. And then in the future, it will also give you links for discount codes on the merch store and things like that. While I'm on the merch store topic, head on over there, buy some merch, help the podcast out. You can click the link below, our Bitcoin wallet, and donate some Bitcoin to us. Or you can always do what you've been doing so dutifully since we've had this podcast, is like, subscribe, share, hit the bell for notifications, and more importantly, just tell us about all your friends and tell all your...
No, take that again.
Tell all your friends and family about us and how much we enrich your life.
So mom is like a bit of a yenta, but she's okay. My dad really gets on my tits. He won't let me go out at night.
Those are all the ways to stay in contact with the show. We appreciate everything you do to help this little podcast grow. And with that being said, we'll see you next week on 164.
And as always, guys, stay safe, but more importantly, stay free.